The greatest menace that faces the human being in the 20th century is the coming into existence in our times of the totalitarian state, which can take many forms. It doesn't have to take the form of right-wing fascism. It can take the form of left-wing fascism. It can take the form of psychological movements. It can take the form of religious movements. It can be powerful people, manipulatory people. And essentially, I'm pleading the cause of those people who are not strong. I mean, I identify myself as essentially a weak person. And I think, that I can speak for the people who are not powerfully armored against authoritarian authority figures and authoritarian groups and movements, states, that I speak for all the people who get victimized because they are essentially weak and do not have tactics of direct defense. And this is one reason why my protagonists are essentially what's called anti-heroes. They're almost losers in a way, and yet, I try to equip them with certain qualities by which they can survive.
Welcome to Strange Days, Here We Come. I'm your host, the pop mythologist. The quote that opened today's episode is from an interview with the author Philip K. Dick, which I will cite in the show notes. And it'll soon become clear why I opened with a quote from him. But first, I wanted to introduce my guest today. Recently, I've been reaching out to members of the extended pop mythology family. As mentioned in previous episodes, pop mythology is the overarching media brand behind this podcast. And at the moment, the core family is basically just me and my friend, the film critic and novelist Just Kroll, who often joins me on this podcast as well. But over the years, we developed quite an extended family who occasionally contributed content on the blog. One of them, Sapient from the metal band Abominum, joined me last episode to talk about Nightbreed and A Quiet Place. And today, I have with me another member of our extended family who has also in the past contributed content. Her name's Aleena Averly, and she has many talents. One of those talents is creating tutorial videos on YouTube and Instagram for fantasy, horror, and sci-fi makeup, and costuming, and prosthetics, and just a bunch of things. We'll be talking a little bit about her work in just a bit, and we'll also be discussing 2 films that she has chosen for us today. But first, I just wanted to ask a little favor of the listeners out there. I intentionally haven't brought this up for a long time, but if you enjoy this podcast, it would really help us if you could subscribe, leave a positive star rating or review, or share it with someone you think might be interested, or any combination of the above. I don't include any ads to make this as pleasant a listening experience as possible, and I don't even have an active Patreon campaign anymore, and that's also deliberate. So this is entirely self-funded, and yes, podcasts do cost money. So if you can do any of those things, we'd greatly appreciate it. But now, back to today's episode. As mentioned, Aleena has chosen 2 science fiction films for us to discuss today. Blade Runner 2049 and Elysium. But first, I'd like to say, Aleena, welcome to Strange Days, Here We Come.
Hi, thank you so much.
Before we get to the movies, can you take a moment to describe the work that you do in a little more detail than I was able to provide?
Absolutely. For quite a few years now, I've had a YouTube channel where the main goal is to create tutorials for anyone at basically any level who just enjoys creating and doing makeup. I remember growing up wanting to recreate looks from movies and my favorite shows and not having resources back then, considering I'm pretty much ancient at this point. And it's just been such a nice turn to be able to create something that somebody who may have been just like I was when I was younger, they can turn to a resource and create and learn on their own at their own pace without having to spend a ton of money or having a lot of resources.
Yeah, that's really amazing of you to do that. And in addition to makeup and costuming tutorials, you also create like various kinds of gear and props, is that right?
I do. I don't get to do that as much in my personal life. I do that in kind of my day-to-day a little bit more. My daytime job currently is I do work for Universal Studios, doing the costumes and items for the different characters around the park.
Is there anything you can't do? Like, can you leave some talent for the rest of us?
I'm really bad at cross stitching.
Okay. Well, there you go. Thank you. That's very generous of you to leave that for us. Actually, would you be willing to, and you don't have to, do you want to say anything about your day job? Because that sounds super cool in itself.
Yeah, it's pretty fun. It's pretty much a year-round thing. Majority of what I end up spending most of my year on are the costumes and the elements for the different characters for Halloween Horror Nights, because there's just so many mazes and characters and items involved in that. Right now, we've already jumped straight into production for Grinchmas there in the park. And then in the off seasons, it's things like the costumes for the Waterworld shows, or Frankenstein and the monsters walk around the park, and Beetlejuice and all that for the character interactions. So it keeps me pretty busy.
Oh, God, that is amazing. So whether it's for, your day job or your personal work, who are some of your favorite characters to do makeup or costuming for?
Oh gosh, I think at the park, I think I really enjoy doing always at the beginning of the season. I love doing HHN because it's always new characters, new mazes, new art that we're bringing to life. But then by the time it's towards the end, you're so burnt out and tired and physically worn down that then I hate it. And then I get so excited, and suddenly Grinchmas is my favorite because now it's all glitter and clean. So it just switches depending on the season. But it's nice because it does change every few months. So it kind of switches it up a bit for you.
Right. Are you a horror fan?
I am. I'm more of a sci-fi than I am all-out horror. But my first love is creatures and prosthetics. So it always kind of bleeds into that as well. So when it comes to like character design and different effects, I have to watch it.
Awesome. So I wanted to ask you something about your Instagram account. Something I've noticed is that in addition to all the creative content, you'll sometimes share content that is socially conscious or expresses certain political viewpoints. For example, in relation to the ongoing crisis in Gaza, just as an example. And I was wondering, do you not worry that that might sometimes make you lose some followers, perhaps, who don't necessarily share similar viewpoints or just anything like that?
I come from a background when I was really young of doing promotional work and brand ambassador work for companies. I started that when I was 16. It's where I learned to talk so much and interact with all different levels of people. And during my time doing that, you really learn that you want to be brand friendly and you want to be fairly neutral and just kind of always professional. So for the most part of my life, I keep my absolute personal life off of the internet for the most part.
Mm-hmm.
But just as the years have gone on and more things are just coming more to the surface and becoming so much more divided, I feel like during this time, it almost feels wrong to just stay silent on something that you believe in so much. And at a certain point, if you care so much about being so brand friendly, you're kind of just willing to stay silent for $1 is how it feels. And that has never really sat right with me. So the more that things have been shared online and become more public and become more connected, and with things like, the advancement of TikTok and seeing more of the other side of things that news would normally not show you, I feel it's necessary as a person in any society to speak up when you see something that's wrong. And so I try not to engage in direct debates with anyone anymore and things like that. Because at a certain point, you still have to keep your peace of mind. But being clear where you stand on something between right and wrong, if a brand doesn't want to work with me because of that, well, then that's not really a brand I would want to work with. It sounds like somebody I wouldn't align with anyways. So I don't know. I've just kind of made the decision that I don't care. I'm I'm kind of just in it for the joy of creating and connection. And part of human connection is actually caring about people. So I just choose that. And if I'm poor forever while I create, well, that's fine too.
And in fact, it is your social consciousness and empathy that made me want to invite you onto this podcast, because this podcast is a pop culture podcast, but it's not just that. The other half of it is about important societal and political issues. And by political, I mean that with like a lowercase p, as my friend Sapient put it in the last episode, meaning it's not so much necessarily like, oh, Republicans versus Democrats or conservatives versus liberals, but in the sense of examining structures of power and hierarchy and oppression and humanity, or conversely inhumanity, that underlie our lives and how we might go about like navigating these things. And the films you chose were perfect for that. In fact, speaking of those films, we'll be talking today, as I mentioned earlier, about two films, Blade Runner 2049 and Elysium, both of which you chose for us today. Before we dive into detailed discussions for each film, can you just give me like a general rundown of why you chose these two movies in particular out of all the many movies out there about dystopia and or societal collapse?
Absolutely. 2049 in particular is one of my favorite films. It's unfortunately one of my comfort films that I return to over and over. I thought it was such an amazing follow-up to the original groundbreaking film of Blade Runner, but it is so parallel to how we are with society now and kind of where we're going, that trajectory that we're on. And it kind of makes you question the morality of existence and what is actually considered sentient and human. And with Elysium, you have almost a more extreme version that's more to the ground and gritty. It's less AI heavy, but it still feels like with our advancing it on class inequality and separation, it feels, again, like a very real possibility, but you still, even in such dark times, have these pockets of people that are willing to step up, whether it is to defend others or just for the sheer fight for the chance to exist and survive. And I just feel like both of those themes are so very human, even though a lot what's happening in the movies, particularly Blade Runner 2049, they may not actually be human, but it's such a human theme.
Completely. Yeah, absolutely. I agree. And I just realized I might have been mispronouncing the title of one of the movies. Is it Elysium or Elysium?
It's so funny that you say that because I just rewatched it a day before yesterday and I'm questioning it too when I heard you say it. I think they both apply.
Okay, so we'll both pronounce it however we want.
There you go.
So something I found interesting, well, there are many things I found interesting, but often on this show, I'll talk about some of the overlap and also some of the differences between the concepts of dystopia and societal collapse. But both of these films are examples where we see both dystopia and collapse. Like the beginning of both of the films start with these captions that basically explain to us that the world in both of these futures has collapsed. There's been an ecological collapse. That kind of is the backdrop against which the stories occur. So I thought that was interesting. And then also both movies take place in LA, which is our city.
Oh, this is true.
And I don't know if that's something to be proud of or what.
I mean, I feel like it tracks. That sounds right.
Part of me is like, go LA. Now, wait a minute. Why is our city always chosen as the dystopian location?
Oh, no. I guess it is. Yeah, because it's right next to New Vegas. Oh, no.
Oh, well, that's for another episode. That's one of my favorite games, New Vegas. So I thought we could start by discussing Elysium.
Elysium.
Mostly just because, like, we both like this movie, but we both also like Blade Runner more. And so I thought we could warm up with this one and then save the best for last. What do you think?
Sounds perfect. I like it.
Okay. So, Elysium, 2013, written and directed by Neil Blomkamp. We have Matt Damon as Max da Costa. Is it Alice Braga, who plays his friend Frey? Jodie Foster in a rare villainous turn, playing Delacourt. A very minor role, but my boy, Diego Luna, who of course plays Cassian Andor, is in it, which is kind of like an interesting thematic overlap. And so I'll just set up a bit of context for this film, and then I'd like to hear your opening thoughts on it. So the premise of this film is that in the future, Earth is, quote, diseased, polluted, and vastly overpopulated, end quote. And the opening images show us mountains of trash and waste everywhere, kind of like in WALL-E. And against this backdrop of collapse, we're told that the wealthy, the proverbial 1%, all escaped into a giant space station, Elysium, to preserve their lifestyle while everyone else, the 99% on Earth, just have to make do as best they can, which, as you already alluded to, may not be so far off from where things are headed rapidly, because the ultra wealthy are buying up a lot of land, even like entire islands. And many of them are building luxury underground bunkers. And granted, that's moving deeper into the earth instead of leaving Earth, but it's the same basic principle, I think, of like escaping to preserve their lifestyle and leaving the rest of us with the mess they made.
Well, you even have those couple very, very popular short episodes in Love, Death, and Robots, where the adorable robots keep visiting places on Earth after the death of humans. And they've kind of turned it comical, but they flat out say that in a couple ways on, I think they're on a ship that the wealthy have escaped to. And they're like, but they knew everyone would die if they took all the food and money. And they went, exactly. And they turn it into a joke. But it's just such a relatable one that you kind of have to laugh.
I have not seen any of Love, Death, and Robots. I think I better, though, based on what I just heard.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
It's amazing because every single episode is, I think, 20 to 30 minutes long, and it's made by completely different teams of people and artists. So it's all different art styles and all different stories. They're mini stories.
Mm-hmm.
But there's one in particular with those little robots that they have 2, possibly 3 episodes in the seasons where they just pop back up, and they're basically on vacation going around Earth, and there's like skeletons and stuff everywhere and broken down cities, and they're giving facts about humans, and basically all the facts are wrong, but also they're not. And it's funny, but also kind of like, yeah, they would leave us to die.
Yeah. I mean, it looks like they're getting ready to do just that. So, okay, I'm definitely going to check that out. So yeah, of course, the big core theme in this film is the class divide and class oppression. And it's very dramatically visualized with the literal divide between the wealthy who live on the space station and everyone else who lives on Earth. And there's like this oppressive robot police force that goes around harassing everyone with what they call a zero tolerance policy and using excessive force. And yeah, it just feels very, very, very relevant.
Feels too real right now.
Too real. And I think it's also no accident in this film that most of the people on Earth, with a few exceptions, including Max, played by Matt Damon, as mentioned, and his boss at the factory, but most of the people on Earth that we see are brown people.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there are those bad guy soldier guys, but the only reason they're on Earth seems to be to act as bounty hunters and mercenaries. Oh, and speaking of bounty hunters, we don't have to go into this right now, maybe a little bit later, but I actually just read a couple of days ago that ICE is planning on using cash rewards to hire bounty hunters to track down immigrants.
I have read that. Yes, there's a few things they've said where I keep waiting. The more they push the boundaries, the more people worship and get excited about things like Luigi and French Revolution. So I don't know. I don't know how much they want to push stuff. You push people down too far, it explodes at a certain point.
Well, like history shows us that repeatedly. And I always think to myself, why is it that the most privileged and the most wealthy people get sent to these elite institutions? Like basically ever since birth, they go to these prep schools and they go to the Harvards and the Yales, and I don't know what they're doing there. And yeah, I know a lot of these Ivy League schools are just a way to maintain class hierarchies as much as anything else. But I mean, they got to be studying part of the time at least. I mean, do they read history? It's like you would think the lesson you would learn is you can only push people so far before they basically just want to burn everything down, right?
That's kind of what it is. And if you look at it, they're also taking the time to delete history and hoping that you didn't read it yet. And if they hit delete, you'll never know, which is just insanity. But yeah, they're trying.
Yeah. Oh my God. Okay, so many themes. Okay, we'll get to it. Can you just start by sharing some of your overall thoughts about the film as a whole?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So when you have, Elysium itself, you have an extremely rigid dichotomy between two classes. So you've got the rich of the world that are quite literally living safely among the stars. And then you've got the lower class that are abandoned on that poverty-stricken and very heavily polluted world. I don't think there's trees in that world when I rewatched it. But what's so funny is they still need these people to keep Elysium running. They can't survive without them, but it's turned into, we keep them literally a planet away because as long as we don't see it, we don't need to care and we don't need to humanize them. It's a direct example of that growing divide between society and the 1% and the absolute growing disappearance of a middle class altogether, which we're seeing in real time right now in our society. I also find it really interesting that the robots that are used to do all the quote unquote dirty jobs to keep things running on Earth, and even then, the poor are considered below the robots in that movie. They're still
Totally.
subject, the robots are, subject to their programming and their decisions, but the people have to listen to them without question. And so, in that sense, in Elysium, the poor aren't even human to the wealthy. They're literally just a tool, just like the bots themselves. But since they've put money into the bots matter. The people are disposable. And that's just kind of the day to day life for that entire universe.
Exactly. And you've already sort of touched upon one of the recurring themes we'll talk about later with Blade Runner of
Yeah.
the status of different kinds of people and whether they constitute humanity or human. But yeah, you're right. The robots, they look very shiny and clean. Like they're maintained better than all the humans on Earth who are getting sick. And
Yeah. Except for the DMV looking robot, he was pretty scuffed up, which actually kind of makes me laugh. And yet, even him, he had to listen to, wasn't allowed to be sarcastic.
oh yeah, the AI parole officer.
Everybody hates the DMV.
And we'll get to it when we get to Blade Runner, but there were some some sequences that seem to mirror each other in these two films.
Oh, absolutely.
So like in Blade Runner, when Cade does those baseline tests where he's in that room with like what seems to be an AI system, like testing him to make sure he's quote unquote like stable, right? Or constant. And Max sitting in front of this AI parole officer after he just got harassed, right? And he's trying to explain the situation. AI keeps going like, stop talking. You just talked, so we're going to add more time to your parole sentence. It's just like, okay.
I loved when he cracked a joke at the robot. He instantly said, "This is abuse." And they don't even want them to have a human element, even if that's the element of comedy and joy, whether it be sarcastic or not. It's crazy how inhuman they want the humans to be.
Oh, so well put. Yeah, exactly. So it's like all these different aspects of people's humanity, including one of our basic ones, which is humor. Sometimes, especially in times of adversity or crisis moments, right? I mean, it's like sometimes it's all you have. And yeah, it's like, oh, you just cracked a joke. We're going to add more time to your parole, And that kind of made me think like throughout this entire film, all the ways that advanced technology plays such a primary role in the oppression of the people on Earth, right? So you mentioned the robots, and then of course the space station itself and like the tattoo or branding system you get on your forearm so you can access everything on it. The satellite and radar system that monitors space to look for spaceships carrying quote unquote illegals. And of course, the med bays, which might be the most dramatic symbol of something that only the wealthy have access to. That's really kind of like a basic human right, but the 99% on Earth don't have access to it. And this makes me think about, of course, all the ways that technology in our real world is used and is being used in oppressive ways. And I wanted to ask you, like, what kinds of technology do you see? And this can really be anything. What kinds of technology do you see right now that you find disturbing or that make you feel worry or really just like any of that?
Some of this is going to sound a little bit political, but you have things where the government keeps very excitedly giving updates of the new systems that they're investing in to help track everyone in America. And it's so funny because where my mind immediately goes to when I read that article is something that is actually already occurring in the Elysium movie, where they're able from Elysium itself to track every single human and what they're doing on the ground. So in particular, there's that scene when they're trying to steal the data and it's gone wrong and he's running away. There's a point where the satellite is looking at him and he uses a mirror to look for the bot. And his eye reflection in the mirror, the satellite was able to say exactly who he was and bring his information up on the screen. And I feel like we're attempting that in a society right now. We track every little bit online and even in our cars and our phones, phone call conversations. They make that clear when you read through all your information for any technology that you buy that, hey, we're keeping track of everything. And they want to still push that even farther. And it's just kind of such a scary concept because unfortunately, when you have such a grand technology, historically speaking, humans don't end up using that for good. They use it for profit and control. And we're seeing it in real time as well.
Exactly. I wasn't sure which, like technological aspect you were going to mention, but I was going to mention that one as well, basically the mass surveillance.
Well, there's a way worse one that scares me more, but that's the more political one.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of scary stuff for sure. But yet the mass surveillance, because it has so many different implications about the ways it could be used, like the big evil corporation that really scares me is Palantir.
Yeah.
And like for anyone who's listening who, just in case, might not be familiar, they're basically a corporation that provides mass surveillance services to other corporations and government agencies such as law enforcement, like ICE is actually one of Palantir's biggest clients, the U.S. military, intelligence agencies like the FBI and CIA, just like all kinds of people you wouldn't necessarily want to have massive amounts of digital data about you and have a complete profile of you that knows you better than maybe even we know ourselves, that could be weaponized in all kinds of ways.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah, and then of course, and that goes hand in hand with like the facial recognition in the film that you alluded to with Matt Damon. It's just his eye, like it's that perfect, it's that precise.
And I think that's ultimately what their goal would be. They want 100% tracking all the time.
Yeah. Oh man, nice, cheerful, little, lovely conversation we're having.
So positive.
No, but I love it because but it's cathartic, and and it's important to be talking about this stuff.
Well, and I think films like this, they end up being such a comfort film because in the end, humanity always seems to win, whether a small or large degree. And I think that's almost why people enjoy these films, because as much as you can relate to it and go, oh, that's scary, in the end, you're like, but it turns out okay.
Yeah, and that probably maybe one big difference between these two films is I think in Elysium, we see like a literal revolution where Max and his friend Spider and a few of their teammates hack into the system, upload what's in Max's brain, and reboot the entire system so that everyone on Earth is a citizen. It's like an outward, literal revolution of sorts. And in Blade Runner, and we'll talk more about it when we get to it, but we don't really see, in that film anyway, an outward, like physical revolution. We see maybe the beginnings of it. And in fact, some of the short films in Blade Runner, I don't know I hope I'm not jumping ahead too much right now, but like, yeah, there's some short films of Blade Runner 2049 that was released at the same time that do show physical revolution, like the Blackout of 2022. But in the main film in 2049, it's more like an internal transformation.
It's like an underground movement and like pockets of movement.
Yeah.
But in fairness, in Elysium, they're so much more limited as a society, technology-wise, more than anything. Any technology that they have, they seem to have stolen. And they kind of show you through violent means and stuff. And again, it's that doing what you have to survive kind of mentality.
Yeah, and speaking of survive, what do you think of so one of the most striking sequences for me in this film were the factory scenes of Max at his job.
Oh, God. Yes.
Not the first one, but like the second sequence where he gets hurt.
Yes.
It's like a futuristic version of that classic novel by Upton Sinclair, The Jungle, that portrays the working conditions in factories in the early 20th century. And of course, you have that boss who is almost like an exaggerated classic evil boss because he's just so bad and so uncaring. And then, of course, the boss above him. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Sorry, I feel like he's that way intentionally because everyone in that society, like you've said, has so much control with everything that they say, they do, their interactions by robots. Whereas this boss has been given these people under him. He's the only one with any control. And you can tell he's probably that character that's really hoping he's gonna be one of the important people one day.
Right.
But he's just a tool as well.
Right. As if they're going to let him on Elysium because his boss, the boss above him, who's even more evil, in that one moment is like, stop breathing on me. Like,
oh my gosh, I know. It was humbling for him.
Yeah. But it was so striking, like how when Max gets hurt, he gets that massive dose of radiation and he's treated so inhumanely, right? Like the robot drags him out of that chamber, drags him into that little sort of nursing station, throws him on the bed, literally throws a bottle of medication at him.
That was crazy. Literally says, by the way, you're going to die. Here's some pills to make it tolerable for 7 days. And you're going, how do you even process that?
It feels a little bit exaggerated maybe, but like there are real life equivalents of it where people get hurt in all kinds of jobs all the time and don't get properly compensated, or the company denies responsibility, or they find some sort of legal loophole.
Always the loophole.
Always a loophole. There was like, for example, with Amazon, there were some factory warehouse workers who got hurt and they were just like left to fend for themselves. And one of them became homeless and they had to like do these GoFundMe campaigns to try and pay for their medical bills. It's just awful. And if we go even further back in history, there are even worse examples that are literally like on the level of what happens in this movie to Max, of like, there's something called like the Hawks Neck tunnel disaster, which I read about while researching for this episode, where a bunch of these workers were digging this tunnel in the 1930s for this corporation, and they weren't given any protective equipment, like extremely long hours without breaks, and like hundreds of them developed this fatal lung disease from inhaling too much of this silica dust.
Well, we have examples through history where every time there's something making money, they're willing to look the other way for the safety of the people. Unfortunately, we've never grown past that. Like you said, we still do it now. I think one of the stories I like the most of is the story of the Radium Girls, where they already knew that there were people literally with their teeth falling out and their hair falling out and dying from the poison that was seeping into their bodies. And knowing that, they still campaigned to these young, beautiful women that, look, it makes you glow. You can put it on your lips when you go out at night. It's a status symbol. And they just kept taking the sick people and putting them somewhere else.
I haven't seen that one either. Well, that's going on my list as well.
That's actually a real case in history, unfortunately. I want to say it was around somewhere between the 20s and 40s. I've listened to so many things recently, I might be mixing it up. But it was they hired young, beautiful women to paint the little tiny numbers and things on the clock faces that would glow from the radium.
Uh-huh.
And it was this powder, and they would get it all over their clothes and they would rub it on their eyes and stuff because they'd go out at night and their eyes and things would glow. And because they wanted everyone to know they were a radium girl. And the company knew the cancerous effects that was occurring. And they just kept sending them off to a hospital and silencing them until they were forced to go, oh, we're killing everyone.
Jesus. Okay, so you said this is known history. So okay, I got to see this. I mean, it doesn't sound like again cheerful material, but it's definitely going to be bumped up my list because that sounds very compelling.
There's a lot of really great podcasts and documentary and books on it. It's insane.
Yeah. Oh wow. Thank you for another item to add to my list. And so, like, speaking of technology, another thing that I thought was interesting was the exoskeleton that Max wears and uses, and it helps him succeed because otherwise he's too sick to be doing all the things he does. What that kind of symbolized for me is the way that technology, which is originally created by the wealthy and powerful and is intended to be used for their purposes, can sometimes be repurposed and co-opted for our purposes or the people's purposes.
Yeah.
So, yeah, because most of the exoskeletons we see in that film are worn by like the bad guys, but Max gets one. It's an older model, it looks like, but nevertheless, he repurposes it for good. And that kind of made me think about like the way, for example, smartphones, like you mentioned earlier, all the surveillance and tracking, and they are used for that. But we also see how the way people use it to document abuses by the police or by ICE or by whomever, for example. So it can be used for good. And there are many other examples with like lots of other kinds of technology. So that was interesting to me.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you even look at America going so far as to try to ban and then kind of bully their way into purchasing TikTok. And, since they've seen the algorithm change, and it started as an app where people would dance or share recipes and do little clips, that were just funny little things. And then it turned into this massive form of information between countries, even of things that we do not see in our media and our news outlets and on other social media sites. And it seems like the moment, people started speaking up on these things that they were now able to see in real time, you had the government swoop in and we have to take this away because it's so dangerous. You're being tracked, which is hilarious because no one's tracking us more than our own people, and saying, it's so bad for this, this, and this, but we still want it to be around. We just want to control it. And now it's pushing out commercials and things that are the opposite of anything that media is telling you.
That is a great example. Yeah, TikTok is a really good example. Thank you for mentioning that. Wow, you're good. So let's see. Maybe we can also now weave in a bit of the immigration-related themes.
Yes.
So, of course, there are some very hard-hitting images in this film of people getting rounded up, arrested violently, families getting separated, people getting thrown into cages, literally. And then Jodie Foster's character, Delacourt, when she's trying to justify using her methods, she says things like, oh, you know, they're going to come for your house, for the house you built for your children and your children's children. By the way, just like a brief aside, I don't know, what do you think of her character and her performance? I love Jodie Foster, but I don't know about that performance.
I love her so much, but is she British or not?
Exactly.
I was so confused.
Yeah.
Every other thing she said, I'm like, oh, okay, oh, okay. And I'm going, I think she's just fancy. It was an interesting choice.
Yeah. Like you said, I love her. She's a brilliant actress, but yeah, I was like, what is that accent? Like, what is that supposed to be?
I think it was a creative choice of, I'm showing you that I'm educated and prim and proper, but not necessarily British. And I don't think it landed right.
Yeah. Although, you know what I did? There's a moment that I did like, and it was interesting. When she's first introduced and she's speaking French to some of her guests at this party, and she goes to this one young girl and she's like being really sweet, like touching her face and saying like, look, I got a little present for you in that room over there. Like, go check. It's almost like an awe moment. And that kind of made me think how, you know how sometimes when people are like, but like rich people are nice too, or can be nice too. And sometimes I think, yeah, they're going to be nice to their friends and their family. They're not going to be like go around being assholes all the time necessarily. I mean, maybe some of them, but a lot of them, yeah, on the surface, they'll be pleasant, they'll be polite, especially to their friends and to their family. And so it's not about like them being nice or not nice. The point is that you can be quote unquote nice person and yet still be participating actively in the oppression of people, right?
You see it in real time in America right now and in multiple countries.
Yeah. And so she's being really nice to her people right there. And yet at the same time, then she turns around, goes to her job and is doing these horrible things. But yeah, so the immigration stuff, you go first. And then I have a specific thing that I wanted to say, but I wanted to let you share any of your thoughts on that theme first.
Yeah, of course. With Elysium, you have this complete militarized border. So it's kind of what we have right now when we started off with building walls and adding more and more guns at the border and things like that. Now you have expanding areas like ICE. It's kind of parallels all of that to the point that, they had the option to shoot people that were trying to go to Elysium for a better life, to go to a different area that is safer. And you could tell that whatever they were running from, the risk was greater staying. And so they very comfortably shot them out of the sky. I did like that there was a moment in that quote unquote war room where Jodie Foster said, go ahead, shoot them down, kill them all. And they kind of question her and say, hey, we're kind of not allowed to do that. Like there's still this illusion of morality in that society when it's among their own people. And then she says, no, it's fine. And when they do blow up one or two of the ships at that moment, you do see the people actually flinch in response. So they still have that ability in them to recognize that, doing certain things is still wrong. But yeah, it's such an extreme response to someone getting close. And it's kind of like they do in society now. You find an enemy and you make them scary, because the more you make them scary and the more you make them different, the easier it is to remove their humanity. So then as they get more extreme in their methods and what they're doing, parallel to ICE in particular, you're less likely to speak up and say something. Because at least it's not you and they're not you. They're someone totally different and they're scary. They're a bad guy. So they're doing you a favor.
That is actually a perfect segue into the point that I wanted to share. It's something that I want to make a case for. And Aleena, I apologize in advance if this becomes a bit of a lengthy rant. I'll try not to.
No, I'm ready.
What I love, one thing I really appreciate about this film is the way it juxtaposes the class issues with the immigration theme, because they do go hand in hand. And when you have class inequality that's as high as it is right now in our real world, And it just keeps getting worse due to bad leadership, bad monetary and fiscal policies, and really, in my personal opinion, just due to the nature of capitalism itself. Then you're going to have a lot of people who are very frustrated and angry that they're not able to maintain the same standards of living as before. And anytime when you have like an economic crisis, then immigration issues, just historically, or just like some kind of scapegoating in general, are effective forms of distraction and are convenient and easy targets for people's frustration and anger. But the real target should be the ultra-wealthy who have hijacked our political system, so that none of the things that anybody wants on the political spectrum are really getting done or happening. So it's not even just like liberals or progressives or leftists, but I would argue that conservatives are not getting what they want either. I mean, the far right might be getting what they want, but conservatives in the classical sense, they're not going to get what they want. And that's because, like I said, the wealthy have hijacked our political system. And people might say, like, conservatives are cheering on ICE and they want the deportations to happen. But I would say that's what they think they want because they're being scammed. But really, what many of them actually want deep down is just for their material conditions of their lives to get better. And the immigration stuff is a way to channel the frustration, which is being exploited by those in power. They know that people's material conditions are not going to get better because it's not in the interest of the wealthy for people's conditions to get better. And so the immigration stuff is a convenient way to like give people little crumbs. Like, here you go. We're going to deport people who are, we're going to convince you are the source of the problem. So you should be happy, even if your economic situation doesn't improve. And they won't because it's not in their interest for them to improve.
Right.
And if anything, like all this scapegoating of immigrants is just going to make our economy crash even sooner because, immigrants are the backbone of our economy. So I love that juxtaposing of these two issues in this film because they are so interlinked.
Well, and it's so true because in Elysium in particular, they make it. I kind of also, just kind of as a side note, I kind of like. It's almost funny how they leaned into stereotypes. And you kind of touched upon it before, where the people of Elysium, they speak English, but then they also speak French. Everything's clean, everything's healthy. And then on Earth, as you mentioned before, most of the people were not white. And they spoke English and Spanish. And it was such an interesting thing that they're like, no, we keep that over there. And this is over here. Because it's like playing to that stereotype of education.
Right.
But what you have today, that's what it is you take the different, you take the scary, you create the problem, and then you create the solution. And it's all through news output and media manipulation. And I think really what's made it so much worse is the inclusion of just vast amounts of money. If you have enough money, you can own a politician. And we watched it now because they're getting so comfortable because people are so vastly rich in the 1% that they're quote unquote untouchable at this point. And so they're just freely moving in the light.
Exactly. Yeah. What would be your real life takeaway? I mean, you've been touching upon this already all throughout this discussion, but just like in summation, before we transition to Blade Runner, what would be kind of like your takeaway from the film that you would use as a kind of call to arms, or just kind of like something you'd say like, here, people, it's all about this?
I feel like with Elysium, it's so in your face about the divide, the inequality of wealth and health and safety. And we're watching that expand further and further. And I just feel like with Elysium, you have everyone on Earth that's suppressed by a system that purely benefits the rich and forces the earthbound to work or to starve. They really don't have an option other than to go with it. And they don't really have a chance to get ahead. And now we've removed the middle class in our society and made that span so much larger. And we've shown kind of recently with just this past week with the voting that we've had to be able to take control of certain elements of the House and stuff to bring back change. More people need to be willing to speak up. And I'm talking from both sides, from political parties. You have so many insanely illegal and immoral things occurring, but they're going unchecked because you have people sitting so quietly making a paycheck, enjoying their insider trading in the government. Because let's be honest, that's exactly what they all do because it's legal the way that they do it. There gaining so much money, but at what cost? So what it would need to be is at this point for people to kind of wake up and find their humanity again, to find that line of, hey, I may be making a lot of money, but when is enough enough? And when does human life hold value in comparison again? And be willing to stand up and go against the grain and, in a sense, kind of piss everybody off for what's right. And it's just a matter of wondering, what is that limit for these people? Because there doesn't seem to be one at the moment.
Indeed. My takeaway complements yours. It complements yours very well. And it's kind of maybe from the other end, from the perspective of the 99%. So my real life takeaway from this film would be that we need to recognize who the real adversary is in terms of class oppression and the breakdown of material living conditions and things not getting better, no matter who gets voted into office, seemingly. And the film really shows us that the proverbial 1% are the quote-unquote enemy, and that regardless of our politics, us regular people are in the same boat. In the sense, as I said earlier, none of us right now are being truly represented right now, no matter what your politics are, because of class oppression. So it doesn't even do any good right now to be fighting and arguing about every little thing, because like nobody is going to get what they want. So my hope is that we can build class solidarity, even if it's just temporary, so that we can take back our political system. And then if we want, we can go back to fighting each other. But because at least then we could actually be represented, and maybe some of us will get what we want some of the time. Like, even though I am on the left, very far on the left, in fact, and even though I obviously disagree with conservatives about many things, and I even disagree with more moderate liberals about many things because I'm against capitalism. But right now, I think we just need to build solidarity, because I feel like nothing less than a mass movement will do at this point, because as you've been alluding to all throughout, it's just gotten so bad at this point and it just keeps getting worse. So it's like at some point, it's just going to be too late. Yeah, that's my rant.
I completely agree. It's a good rant.
Thank you. I feel like that was a great discussion of Elysium. Now let's transition to Blade Runner 2049, released in 2017, written by Hampton Fancher and Michael Green, directed by, let's see if I can pronounce this correctly. Directed by Denis Villeneuve, I think. I actually watched a YouTube video where this really annoyed French guy was saying, Americans, stop saying it this way, say it this way. So YouTube, French guy, I hope I did it right. I don't know. I tried. Ryan Gosling as Officer K, Harrison Ford as Deckard, Ana de Armas plays Joy, Sylvia Hooks, who plays Love, Robin Wright as Lieutenant Joshi, and Jared Leto as Wallace. I think that's kind of like the primary cast. It's a pretty big cast, but I think those are the main people. This is, of course, the sequel to the 1982 original Blade Runner, which in turn was based on the novel Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep by Philip K. Dick, who is a super interesting figure. I started out this episode with a quote from him. We could definitely talk a little bit about him and his ideas if we have time, because he is one of my all-time favorite authors, just as this movie is one of my all-time favorite movies. It is so dense with so many important themes, and to pack everything, I think would take several episodes to do justice to it. So for now, we'll focus on a handful of core themes. And I feel like many of these themes can be best expressed as questions like, what is human? What makes a human, or what makes us human? How do you stay human in a world that punishes humanity and rewards inhumanity? What is real? You know, author Philip K. Dick was very concerned with all these questions. Even though this film isn't like a direct adaptation of his fiction per se, it does continue off many of the themes that he wrote about and which were portrayed in the original Blade Runner. Before we jump into the themes and questions, I'd like to start by asking you a question.
Yes.
And it's deliberately intended to be a little bit provocative. So I'm first going to ask the question for rhetorical effect.
Okay.
And then I'm going to explain what I mean by it, just so, you know.
Sure.
The question is, Aleena, are you a replicant?
I wish.
And I'll explain what I mean. This question can be interpreted in a few different ways, and you can answer in any way that you feel called to do so. So the first way to approach the question is, in what ways does the system make you feel like a slave? Like, not in the literal sense of like chattel slavery, but a certain kind of figurative slavery in which you feel trapped in a certain situation or set of circumstances, and it seems like no matter what you do, you can't quite seem to break out of it. Number two interpretation is, in what ways does living in a world that is filled with such inhumanity constantly clash with your own internal humanity in ways that crush your soul? And then the third way to approach the question is, in what ways does this world, our world, make you feel punished for any time you express your authentic self and makes you feel pressure to put on an inauthentic self or facade just so you can survive or pursue your dreams? So again, Aleena, are you a replicant?
Oh my gosh.
And I'll just say I am, and I'm happy to share why, but I want to hear from you.
Sometimes I truly do feel like I am. You know, I get online like anyone does, especially scrolling on social media and stuff, and I see just everything that's occurring in the world and the lack of empathy and accountability and just the general lack of caring. And it's like you said, it's heartbreaking. And I just have these moments that I just feel like I'm so not a part of anything that is occurring. Which in two ways, one can be great because you're like, I'm so grateful that I have feelings that run deeper than that I could not relate to that and can't have the other, the understanding for it. But in another sense, it creates this division that's almost like a severe loneliness because you don't feel human. You don't feel connected to these things. And that's kind of even a recurring theme of loneliness in 2049. And so I might be. I feel less and less human every day by what the definition of human is slowly becoming.
Well, in the way that I meant the question, I actually did mean it as a positive thing, because the great irony of both the Blade Runner films and in the entire fictional universe is that the ones that ironically lose their humanity are many of the so-called real humans, and the ones who often display the most humanity are the ones who are persecuted and hunted for being replicants, supposedly fake or not real humans, but they actually are in the ways that matter most. So if being a human is just purely being naturally born biologically, and even physically, replicants are pretty close because they're not like robots, right? They're bioengineered, so they bleed and all that stuff. I mean, they're stronger, yeah, but they are kind of very close physically in a lot of ways. But they're framed as being not human, and yet they're the ones who often display the most humanity. If humanity can be defined as like empathy, love, caring, sacrifice, things like that, which again, in both films, we see replicants displaying the most, ironically, while the humans, like in this film, Officer K's boss, Lieutenant Joshi, actually towards the middle, or at that point when she dies, she seems to display a little bit of humanity. But like early on, she's like that cold boss. When Kay gets hurt after taking down the big guy at the beginning. What was the actor's name? I forgot for a second.
Oh, no.
Oh my God.
I love him. And I follow him online. Dave Bautista.
Yes, of course. Thank you. And so he takes him down and he gets hurt. And his boss is like, speaking of like people getting hurt on the job, like in Elysium, right? And then she's like, I'm not paying for that. Like the first thing she says.
Immediate reaction.
Yeah. So the question, are you a replicant, is, I mean that in a very positive way, in the sense, like, just like you said, you often in this world feel not of it because the things that are rewarded often are not things like empathy or caring. Those things are often punished. And like being a sociopath, basically, seems to be very rewarding if by rewards we're talking about things like material benefits or social status. So, yeah, thank you for sharing and answering the replicant question. Why don't you start us off by just sharing, just like with Elysium, your overall thoughts on the film as a whole, and then we'll dive deeper into specific themes.
Sure. Well, you have with 2049, you have a world that's really depicted by a divided class society where you have the wealthy living in peace and luxury. It's kind of depicted more, I feel like, in the first movie that they're literally living above the smog line. They're all in the upper portions of the city. So in this one, instead of leaving the planet, they've just grown upward. And you have the lower class, they endure all the poverty and the environmental devastation below, which really is a direct mirror to any growing global wealth inequality that we have currently going on. And in 2049, people just seem to kind of have accepted this life. They just try to survive it. And it's really interesting because you have, it shows that society in this version, people kind of just stay in their place for the most part, because you have where they sell human experiences and pleasures, and everyone's kind of fully accepted the integration of AI. And like you said, they've kind of just gone numb to everything. And everything that's difficult or the dirty jobs in this world, they've created replicants and just kind of passed it off to them. And so it's interesting too how the replicants seem to find like the need to take up the mantle to find humanity and define it for themselves as a society goes completely numb to it.
Yeah, it's interesting because, yes, there is the wealth divide. And you mentioned like the spatial division, which in this film manifests a little bit differently from Elysium. And there's also the divide between so-called humans or real humans, whatever, and replicants. And replicants are clearly oppressed. We saw that in both films. And their fakeness, quote unquote, their fakeness is used to justify their oppression.
Mhm.
It's so interesting how, even though they do the dirty work, like you mentioned, early on when we see Officer K going back to the police station after taking down Dave Bautista's character, he's being insulted. People are walking by saying like, like cursing him out, calling him skin job. And he's like looking down, I guess, to avoid offending people or not look anyone in the eye as they're berating him. Yeah, it's just, again, the kind of dehumanizing of people to justify their oppression, which is something we are seeing and historically have often always seen. And of course, like these narratives of dehumanization perfectly benefit those whose interest it is to wage war or genocide or whatever it might be. This film, at the time it came out, felt super relevant, but it feels so much more relevant now. Societally, politically, technologically, with AI. And that's going to be a whole big theme. We got to talk about the AI stuff and like
Oh,
joy.
absolutely.
I was just curious, did you happen to see the short films that were commissioned to be made at the same time
I
as?
did not, and I need to. I really, really need to. I'm probably going to be watching them right after we're done with all of this, but no, I have not yet.
Yeah, they're easy to find. So there are three.
Okay.
One is called Blade Runner Blackout 2022. The next one is called Blade Runner 2036. So they're going down chronologically. 2036 Nexus Dawn. And the third one is Blade Runner 2048 Nowhere to Run. So that one happens just 1 year before the main film.
Mm.
And yeah, it's a really interesting set of companion pieces to the main film. But yeah, Blade Runner Blackout 2022, it's interesting because you mentioned earlier the underground resistance that's sort of building up in the background. But the Blackout 2022 short film shows an actual earlier kind of rebellion.
Mm.
And it really clarifies a lot because in the film, they refer to a blackout, like, oh, that's pre-blackout, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And the short film shows exactly what the blackout is and provides a lot of useful context. So definitely worth watching. And it's interesting to consider the blackout event, which I won't spill details on just in case people haven't seen it, because we're mainly going to stick to spoilers for the two features, Elysium and Blade Runner 2049. But we also see in the beginning of 2049, again, at the very beginning, the captions that tell us that the world ecosystems have collapsed, right? And then Wallace comes up with this technology that can create food artificially, and that's what allows him to essentially ascend to absolute power. Like, what's interesting in the film, there doesn't really seem to be a real government presence beyond Wallace. Like, he seems to be...
Yeah. It's more of a police presence.
Yeah, there is a police, But he seems to be like the dominant corporation and at the same time, almost like the primary political force. So it's, again, I referred to Wall-E earlier.
Yeah.
In that movie too, we see like the convergence of corporate power and government. They become one and the same. So I felt like Wallace is effectively the government and the corporation. It's kind of like, it's almost like this techno-feudalism.
Yeah.
And his power seems absolute. So anyway, just an observation.
It's a good one.
Yeah. So, and then the symbolism of Wallace, like wanting replicants to reproduce.
This is probably what I find most interesting about 2049. You have this society that, again, they sell experiences, they sell emotions, everyone do your own thing. Here's these things that can make you happy. Keep quiet, do what you're supposed to do. But I just find it really interesting that there's this quest to make replicants as human as possible while finding humans themselves completely flawed. There's like this desire shown in the movie to have the power of the gods ultimately to create synthetic life and to unlock this ultimate gift of giving life. But when they find it, it exists, and it's not them who have directly made it, it has to be destroyed. It's like this absolute need to control to make it theirs, or it can't exist at all. And I feel like that's something that we really have, that's so similar to kind of our view of AI at the starting of it now. We want it to be as real to interact with humans as possible and to emulate humans so much that you can't tell the difference, for good reasons or bad reasons, depending on who's in control of it. But not even to be better than humans, but almost equal to. And it's same with the growth of like virtual experiences and things that we have now. And yet we want to control it so much that if anything is unknown and out of the control of human programmers, that's a programming that is canceled and deleted. And it's just so weird that we want it to be so human while we hate humans and then ultimately hate the thing that we create the more human that it gets.
Yeah, I mean, just like right there in your comments, like several themes that I want to go into. And I wasn't even actually planning on getting to this theme until later, but you touched on it and I can't resist. So the AI thing, like, what are your thoughts on joy? Because like the first time I saw this film, it's interesting. I almost felt like it was a naive interpretation, but I was kind of like, oh, she seems genuinely sentient and there seems to be a genuine love between them. And this time, when I was watching it, I'm like, no, that's the whole point. Like, it's this perfect illusion. I mean, I don't think the film gives a definitive answer on whether she's actually sentient or not. I think it's deliberately ambiguous.
I think so too.
The point is to make you confused because, like, the illusion is so perfect that it does seem like she might be sentient, and you're almost tempted to want to believe that she is because Kay is obviously so lonely. And you want him to have companionship, and she seems kind of like sweet in the way she presents. And so you're like, oh, a nice couple. But then I'm like, no, it's this perfect product, and
It is, but it does give you those moments of questioning.
It does. Like she might in fact be sentient. I don't know, but the simultaneous question at the same time that we don't get an answer to is it really just might be the ultimate product because, and we're seeing this already. We're seeing the beginnings of this already with like AI companions.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's like a whole can of worms, right?
It really is. Well, in the film, it really does explore, just as a general concept, identity through the characters, whether they're being born or built, and it kind of forces that debate on whether memories define our humanity or if it's a matter of free will and choice, like which is the thing that makes you most human. But what we see constantly in the film is you have memories can be manipulated, they can be implanted or fabricated. And if you have a person who's had an entire life and they've had these memories and these experiences, and that's what's built them as a person, to take those real memories and experiences and then to put them into a replicant and then to say, oh, but you don't have your own ability to exist. Like you don't have your own sentience. And it kind of just raises that question about the authenticity of our own sense of self. And the film kind of really digs into what it really means to be human. And you're following characters who are either born or built. And it makes you wonder, are we defined by those memories or by the ultimate choices that we make in the end? And since the memories can be changed and manipulated, it kind of just leaves it open to what is actually real. And you even have where you go back to the original Blade Runner, where they kind of hint, and they do it more heavily in 2049, that Deckard is potentially a replicant. And that's brought up multiple times, especially in the second film. But ultimately, by his choice to do what he does to save, this child that they've created and to choose to believe that he is what he is, regardless of anything they try to throw at him, does that make him ultimately human? And it's with AI now trying to be everybody's bestie and just responding in an echo chamber of what you want to hear and not actually questioning morality. I feel like where we are as far as AI is nowhere near where this movie would be. And I honestly don't personally agree that AI should be allowed to be given to the public.
Yeah, no, that is a big rabbit hole I've been going into. And man, I'm like right now, I'm like, calm down, brain, because like it's got
I
like,
know.
I want to talk about this. I want to talk about this.
I'm so sorry. I keep ranting.
No, it's perfect because it is touching up on the many, like I said, the many like equally important and compelling themes in this film. It's so dense. Okay, so the memory thing, right? In a previous episode that my friend Jess and I did on the film Strange Days, we go into this whole question of memory because that film addresses the theme of memory too. And we're already seeing like right now technology with implications about memory manipulation, memory alteration. What years ago was still purely in the realm of science fiction is so quickly becoming reality. Have you seen those things like these AI tools where you'll upload a photo and it will animate it in a seemingly realistic way?
I have.
Yeah,
And
and
I think it's all a trap.
right,
It's
right.
literally a tool of entertainment to get people to upload real images and videos to help program the AI to be more convincing.
Right. So it's using it as data for training.
It
And
is
and they're
to be
also
more able to, in a sense, trick someone that's watching it to be able to unable to be able to tell that it's AI.
yeah, to create better and better illusions,
Yes.
which if we keep sort of extrapolating the implications, like could be used for like mass manipulation, change people's collective
It already is
memory.
being used for that. If you look at watching YouTube, the commercials that pop up that are AI convincing you of so many things, it's crazy. And the amount of people that fall for it is maddening.
You know what? I was recently very upset because I fell for the first time
Oh,
for an
which one?
it was just for a moment though, because up until now, up until recently, I was able to tell usually, right?
Yeah.
And it figures it had to be a video about a dog. Um,
Mine was a cat, so it's okay.
okay, so yeah, we're on the same page here. So it's one of those like jokingly, oh, dogs are better than cats kind of thing, where like a shelf fell over or would have fallen over a baby, but a dog jumped in and saved the baby.
Mm.
But and I was like, "Aw," at first, but then I saw a comment. Fortunately, it was like pretty high up. It was like, "Okay, it's fake." So notice how the dad rushes in and checks on the dog, but doesn't check on his own baby.
Oh, okay, that's funny.
Yeah, and I kind of just didn't even notice that because I was like, "Aw, dogs are the best." And I'm like, "Yeah, of course. What an obvious giveaway now that I see it." But the point is, it just keeps getting better and better. And
Yeah.
it is getting to the point where even if you're sensitive to the issue, and even if you consider yourself aware and mindful, it's kind of just like, even with just like basic social media by itself. Like, I remember the documentary, The Social Dilemma on Netflix, where one of the earlier guys who worked on Instagram or some social media, he said because he worked on it, he knew all about the tricks they use, the psychological tricks to like hook people in and the algorithms. And he knew all that. But then he would go home and he'd like check it and he would feel himself getting addicted in the same way that any average user might. So
Ugh.
that speaks to the power of the technology, and that even if you're totally aware of what's going on and how they're being used, you could still get sucked in, which is part of what's so scary.
It's super scary.
Yeah, no one is immune. And which is why, so I mentioned Philip K. Dick earlier, and in our conversations before the episode, we mentioned Philip K. Dick and how he did, like all of us, have some issues in his personal life, but he was a very compelling, profoundly deep thinker and way ahead of his time.
So ahead of his time.
So ahead and so insanely prescient to like almost unbelievable degree. And if not for him, there would have been no Matrix, no,
No, he literally used the term matrix
yeah,
as describing our society as a computerized running system
yeah.
in the, what was it, the 80s?
think he died in like in the very early 80s. So it would have been probably been the 70s.
Yeah, he had a final interview before his passing that he
Yeah.
did. But the crowd giggled at everything he said. And he was describing quite literally the matrix of being a system that we is so convincing visually and everything going on with electrical systems and whatnot that you have no idea you're in it. And he called it the Matrix. And I remember pausing it while I was listening to it, going, "Oh my gosh, what?"
Yeah. I tried watching it after smoking some weed.
No, I could never.
Yeah.
It would not be okay.
He sometimes kind of like, I've read some of his nonfiction journals too, and he
Yeah.
sometimes seems to go back and forth on like literal interpretation of fake realities and more symbolic interpretations.
Yeah.
And I feel like both are valid. He was very influenced by Gnosticism, which did literally believe that the material world is an illusion. But there was like symbolic ways to approach his ideas too. And from the symbolic perspective, like, yeah, he totally foresaw a future where there would be so many multiple realities and no one would really know. It would get to the point where, because he also vastly foresaw corporate overreach, concentration of wealth and power,
Yeah.
and foresaw the future where there'd be so many realities that nobody would know what was real. And like, we're literally already there, right?
It's so scary.
Yeah. So with like the memory manipulation, which you mentioned, and then yeah, the AI thing, I just want to briefly touch on a bit more where the illusion of realness already, like it's not quite there yet. It's still kind of in its early stages. But the reason it's so scary is that even in these relatively early stages, it's already pretty good. Like I read this
Yeah.
article about, it's happening everywhere. People are literally falling in love with their AI companions.
Oh my gosh. AI psychosis, the
Yeah.
cases that are popping up are, well, one, they're just depressing, but also some of them are so scary.
So scary and so sad.
Well, you have that poor boy that
Yes,
ultimately ended up committing suicide.
exactly. That's the one I was thinking of.
Oh, that was so upsetting to read about.
Yeah. Not to mention what it's going to do to the unraveling shreds of regular human authentic relationships.
Well, we already have the intervention of social media that is quickly warping people's perception of interacting with humans. And there's such a disconnect between people. And then it's so prevalent even in the movie. Like we've kind of said where there's that accepted loneliness of Kay and he has that built and honestly purchased relationship with Joy, but Joy is also readily available companionship to just the general masses. And it's a direct parallel where we are as a society right now and all that we have with this social media and advancing speed of information and connection. And it's so upsetting because it's all so surface. It's lacking actual human connection more and more. And as a society, we're far more connected with strangers in the world online and more detached from each other now more than we ever have been. And it creates this division and a drop in empathy in just normal day-to-day interactions. Everything's a world away behind the computer screen. And it's no wonder that we treat synthetics in the movie as not human. And even AI now, there's still moments of that. Like they've started to come up with offensive terms for synthetics and things. I don't know if you've seen that. That's already a movement that's going. And it's no wonder that we would do that when so many people online are comfortable now in this world treating everyday strangers online as unfeeling and not real in a sense, and these digital walls that are quickly just reshaping our reality.
Yeah. And then what happens when, with human relationships already being so strained, and yet part of the very humanity is the way we're all flawed. It is the way we have to work to understand each other and communicate
Yeah.
with each other. That's part of the experience, right? It's what makes the connections and the love so much more meaningful and real. And what happens when you get these AIs that say yes to everything and never annoy you, never disagree with you, never challenge you in any way? And then you get used to that. The brain adapts to that, comes to expect that. Then you try interacting with a real person and they say something that, I don't know, you disagree with or is challenging you or annoys you, like whatever. And it's just like, oh, too much effort, too much trouble. I'm not going to.
Well, that's what it is. You've got AI validating any feelings, whether they be good or bad or flaws or anything in you. And if you're being told you're wonderful, you're amazing, everything about you is perfect, I'm here for you, why do you ever grow and change as a person? When it's these human interactions and experiences and moments throughout your life that help build you as a human. No person is the same person every 5 years. You're consistently growing and changing. And if you have something like AI telling you, no, you're perfect as is, listen to no one else, you never grow into a worthwhile person.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, it's just so alarming. I saw this YouTube video where this guy was like testing I don't know if there's a name for it, but it's sort of like an AI companion. It's like this quote unquote sexy AI companion as part of Grok, Elon Musk's AI.
Oh, those are so problematic.
Yeah. And he was testing out this thing, and it was kind of funny because like his friend comes over, she pretends to be his girlfriend or his new girlfriend. He's like, I can't remember what the name of the AI companion was, but he's like, oh, I gotta go now. I met somebody in real life and she's over here now. She's like, what? Who? And she was getting jealous, like
Oh,
quote unquote
no.
jealous. Yeah, he's like, "Ah, sorry, what can I say? Like, she's great. Like I think we're just gonna have to part, like you and I. She's like, no, no, I'm not fake. I'm real. I'm like, what? Like they're
See, that's
already.
so upsetting. Well, they did and I should have looked this up before we were ever even chatting. This is so off tangent, by the way. But it was an international study where they set up a camera and they set up of like a clean room, and they were sending people into it. And I do remember that they were not speaking English. I want to say that it was like a Swedish study or something like that. But it was very simple. They were given the instruction that they were going to go into a room and they were going to sit at the table and they were going to flip a switch. And it was just a switch that was going to turn off this machine. And they're like, when you turn it off, it completely erases it. And they're like, okay. But when they go in, it was sculpted to where it looked like it kind of had a very simplistic and innocent, very basic face. And when
Mhm,
they went in, this was before we spread AI, this was a few years back,
mhm.
and it would talk to the people. It would tell them, oh, please don't turn me off. If you do, you'll kill me. And the people would every single time kind of go, oh, wait, what? And they'd kind of laugh. But as they were talking back and forth, and they'd even like reach out to think about turning it off, it would convince them more and more like, no, you're going to hurt me. It'll kill me. And I think ultimately no one could turn it off.
Oh my God, that is
And that was
so.
before we did AI. And it was just eyes and a mouth. I think it had a moving mouth, but it was just like a line mouth. It was something very cute, looked like a child's toy, basically. Very defenseless. And all it said was, if you turn me off, you'll kill me. And they couldn't.
Oh, that is so interesting and troubling.
It was very interesting then. It's troubling now. Because
Yeah.
now you go, oh no.
Yeah, because they actually have documented cases of like AI systems resisting being shut off.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying they're sentient, but just regardless. And it's not hard to actually trick the brain. It's like, oh, it looks and sounds and moves like a human,
Yeah.
so I think it's human. It's not that hard to sort of hack and trick the brain.
Well, when we're in a society where you have social media, where you're lacking the depth and the caring from strangers online, and then you just have this system that's free to you that will talk to you 24/7 and tell you everything's okay. It's filling a need that society is failing.
Yeah, and you just said lack of empathy and caring. So let's talk about the way that in this fictional world, the human qualities of empathy and caring, not only are they not rewarded, they're often punished. And qualities of lacking compassion or coldness and brutal efficiency, those are rewarded. And I asked you that question at the beginning, like, are you a replicant? Meaning one of the ways to approach that question is, do you feel like this world is one that, the real world punishes human qualities of empathy and rewards selfishness and greed?
Oh, on a constant basis. You have people with so much who still need more. You have the billionaires of the world are never rich enough. And so you have people making decisions based off money. And you have, we could use the example of the shutdown right now. We are seeing in real time where they were shutting down SNAP benefits and the courts jumped in and said, hey, you can't do that. And then they immediately countered with lawsuits saying, hey, no. And it's this thing of you have to be sued to feed children because they're not looking at humans. They're not looking at numbers. They don't care about people beneath them. It's kind of what you were saying on the Elysium side of you can be nice to the ones that are equal on your level, but anybody below that, they don't matter. They're not a factor. They are a number on a piece of paper for a working system of worker bees. And so to be able to see in real time that the richest and most powerful people, influential, whether they be government, just random company owners, doesn't matter. They still don't see people as people now. And then you see in 2049 where we've built this society that just runs like that same level of clockwork of what we're seeing right now. That truly feels like the final result of where we are at the moment. It's just a thing where everyone's society is just so low level together that it just kind of is what it is. But they can buy the companionship. They can buy the AI. They can buy the experiences and just have, their imaginary food at home while they're eating the synthetic from synthetic made animals that, everything in that world is showing the concerns of climate change and stuff we have right now, because everything there is dust and just smog and nothing is healthy. And then you have the complete loss of biodiversity due to human inactivity or human activity upon it. You even have where he's walking around with the piece of wood. And
Wait, which character? I don't remember.
with
Oh, yeah,
Kay,
the little
he
toy.
has the horse.
Little toy, sorry. Yeah,
Yeah.
of course.
He's
Yeah.
walking with the horse, and people are asking him about it. And she even says at one point, she said, "What is that?" And he's like, "It's a tree." She says, "I've never seen a tree." And it's this like central thing, but that it's normalized. They're not saying it in a way of like, "Oh, I wish I'd seen a tree." No, it's just a fact. This is our world. This is the smog. The police are in charge. There's one corporation because it's completely monopolized, and it is what it is. And if you have to take out people that are in the way, it doesn't matter. Got to grow. Capitalism.
Exactly. And the way that the illusion of the AI is so perfect that I feel like, so it's used in the film to increase and maintain Kay's subservience
Yeah.
to the authority, because like, okay, we're going to give you this perfect companion. And, if you do your job well and you stay constant and at baseline, don't get emotional, don't let your feelings get in the way. That's kind of like the great sort of tension of the Blade Runner films, in which replicants, they're not like Data on Star Trek where they don't feel emotions. They do feel emotions, right? And that's like the constant conflict they feel of having to do this dehumanizing work for their oppressors, the dirty work, but they're feeling the emotional and moral consequences of it, right?
Yeah.
But Kay gets rewarded, and so it's like, okay, it's this perfect distraction to keep him docile. And I feel like AI is and will, at least if we continue down the same direction we're going now, it will increasingly be used as this perfect distraction to keep people docile.
It already is.
Oh, wait, one more thing about the internal conflict. So it might be surprising, but one of my favorite characters is Love, the villain, one of the villains.
Really? Okay.
And here's the reason why. Even though she does a lot of bad things. There are two occasions when she's crying. I mean, she's trying to hold it back. But the first time is when Wallace is examining the newborn replicant.
Yes.
And you see Love watching in the background, and tears are streaming down her face. She maintains her cold, outward expression, but tears are streaming down her face. And it felt like, okay, because again, replicants aren't unfeeling robots. They feel. And so she is feeling that internal conflict of watching one of her kind be coldly murdered for no reason by Wallace. And yet she is obedient to him. She wants his approval. For me, that symbolizes the way people want the approval of the system, to be considered successful and high status and all that, right? So they're willing to do all these things. They're willing to suppress their humanity. And Love does that for Wallace, even though she has all these feelings. And the second time was when she kills Lieutenant Joshi.
Yeah.
Again, tears are coming down her face, even as she's brutally murdering this person. So there's that internal conflict where she's not a cold, unfeeling killing machine. She is killing for her master, but she feels that emotional and moral conflict, and it's poisoning her soul, and it's removing the last remnants of her humanity. And so, like, she's kind of like this polar opposite of Kay, his shadow version in a way, because Kay is on the same path, because he's obviously starts out as a Blade Runner and is doing this awful work for his masters, but departs from that path, obviously, right? Goes on a different path of transformation, which redeems his humanity. So I saw the two characters as this really interesting mirror contrast with each other. And I couldn't help but feel so sorry for Love this time when I was rewatching the film, because it's like she does feel bad. She does feel this remorse, but the opposing need to be considered a good servant by her master, by Wallace, and to
Mhm.
get his love. And that's why the name is deliberate. I think love is a deliberate choice of their name because she wants his love. She wants his approval and is willing to crush the last traces of her own humanity to get it, which I think is so symbolic of what so many of us are kind of pressured to do to quote unquote succeed in this world.
Mhm.
So yeah,
I have a slightly different interpretation of love.
please, yes.
I feel I agree with everything that you said, but regarding just covering the scenes in particular, so the first time she cries for the destruction of a replicant that's not perfect in the eyes of the creator. And she does, she has the tears and feelings for that. She comes across to me like the child who has always wanted the love of the parent. And she can't reproduce. That's his ultimate goal. But she's still his greatest creation thus far, but he's still looking for better. And she's consistently trying to prove that she's the best. And she even says that at a certain point when they're fighting later on. Later, when she's killing the lieutenant, I get a different vibe from her. She is so ultimately protective of replicants, which seems odd because she does take quite a few out. But it's almost like the need for the perfect angels, is what they've called them in the movies, of needing to protect what she feels equal in creating with Wallace. Like she's the chosen of Wallace. That's his number one. So she feels like this is their mission together that they're completing. And I get the vibe that she cries so much from anger and hatred with the lieutenant because this was after the lieutenant has talked about murdering this perfect creation of her people and just says it so, off the collar. And she has like a lip snarling while she's crying,
Yeah, that's right.
and even says how she's going to justify killing her. She says, I'm going to say you drew a weapon on me first. And then almost smiles when she stabs her. And so I get the opposite, that she's so dedicated to not necessarily finding this being, but ultimately becoming it, finding a way that she can advance to that level and finally be accepted as the perfect being by Wallace. Because she's perfect, but not good enough.
So hearing your take, I actually prefer yours. I think you're right.
But it may just be because she was so easily hateable.
No, I think it is hearing it now. I think it is the more accurate take. But also the underlying part, though, which I still think, and which I think is also true, is like she is feeling like a deep internal conflict, like either way
Yeah.
with either interpretation, and is throughout the film, I think, squashing the last. Like there's not much of it left anyway, but she is squashing the last remnants of her, whatever small trace of it is left. But that's a great take.
Well, I love it because it's these elements that they're always showing in every replicant that make you, it's like you said, they show these moments of humanity. And that's kind of her version of humanity, is for her own people. And then you have with Joy, who is very much like AI. She's supposed to say what you want to hear and be what you want her to be. But then there's these moments that she says more. And then particularly when Love is about to stomp her mobile device,
Hmm.
while she's supposed to be this perfect AI that tells you everything, and she took the moment to try to distract, to protect Kay, she knew she was about to be destroyed, and instead of just allowing her program to end, she almost has this extreme need to get down and tell him that she loves him before she's erased. Like she needs him inside to know what she feels, which is such a human thing to do, not just a computer being turned off.
And that's what made me the first time I watched it years ago kind of be like, oh, like, like maybe she is sentient. But this time I was like, yeah, of course, that's part of the perfect illusion. Like, of
It could
course,
be,
a
yeah.
human or someone designed to resemble the perfect illusion of human would, in the last moments, try to convey her love for someone or something like that. That's exactly what a human would do. So it just adds to the ambiguity, like, like what? She just remains a question mark, as does Deckard.
Well, and if you look at them, like you have even Kay, he's the good boy. He's always following the rules. And yet, throughout the entire movie, he's lying. He's keeping things to himself and doing his own thing the entire time while also following the rules, which, if he was just a machine, he wouldn't want to even go against his programming,
Yeah. And I think it points to like there are a number of ways this film it holds up certain qualities and certain actions and behaviors as being ways to remain human or reclaim your humanity in a world that in a system that seeks to crush it. And rebellion is one of them, I think. And Kay's rebellion is interesting and that starts out very subtle, like you just said, and then it just gradually increases over the course of the film. And just like his final act of sacrifice, which I forgot, it reminds me, both films feature an act of sacrifice by the protagonist, right? So
It
Max in
does.
Elysium
Yeah.
sacrifices himself, yeah, and then Kay, as part of his reclaiming of his humanity, which again, like part of the points of these films, of the Blade Runner films, they are human, they always have been, but the system denies that, and they need to sort of reclaim it. And so part of his reclaiming of his humanity is this act of sacrifice, right, for something greater than himself. And I think that that's the other big thing that the film holds up as a way to reclaim your humanity. Not necessarily like sacrifice your life, that's more symbolic, I think, but commit to things that are just larger than ourselves.
Like the choice to give up more for the greater good.
Yeah, like give up a bit of your privilege, like the people who are using their privilege right now, for example, to look out for their neighborhoods, to sort of like prevent ICE from getting out of hand, or like whatever it is. Just, yeah, committing to causes that are larger than ourselves, I think, is another way the film holds up as a way to reclaim humanity.
Yeah.
And of course, just like empathy, basic empathy, and going against programming, like our cultural and societal programming or conditioning.
I enjoy seeing moments that empathy still exists, I think, as a greater. We haven't reached a point where it's been trained out of all of us yet. And we see it on a regular basis. There are still those moments and those pockets of good on social media and stuff. But even in that experiment that I was telling you with the people not being able to turn off the face,
Yeah.
that's that moment of they even question where they're like, hey, I know this is just like a little voice thing, but just in case I can't turn it off. And I like to think they can't fully ever take that out of people.
Yeah, that case that you shared has its disturbing aspect, but it also has a moving aspect in which that's people's humanity right there. Because they feel like, well, this might be human, or I mean, not whatever, like this might have feelings or whatever, be partially sentient. So I can't do this. And that's compassion. Even
It
if
is.
it's misled compassion, it's nevertheless, it's compassion. And so, yeah, that's their humanity there.
And I think it just exists at our core. Look at a child when they name and love a stuffed animal. And even as an adult, people love to anthropomorphize so many things that they see, whether there's science and stuff to back it, doesn't matter. I think at the core value of a person, they have a nature that wants to see more in the world around them and have a connection with it as the world is continuously trying to digitally connect, but detach us from each other at the same time.
Yeah. Well, it's like I said at the beginning of the conversation about Blade Runner, is like this film has so many themes. No way we're going to be able to cover everything. We're probably going to have to do like multiple episodes and come back to it at some point and approach it from another angle. But in the interest of time and out of respect for your time, why don't you share any kind of like last remaining thoughts about Blade Runner 2049 or anything you were thinking about wanting to say or just whatever?
I just feel that Blade Runner ultimately, and at the end of the day, I think the running theme of it is what does it mean to be a human? And what really defines us is that. And even the film does such a great job of saying, hey, it's because of your experiences and your memories and things. And that's why we give them this. And if you have everything that a human has, if you have all their collected experiences and memories and things, what makes you any different? And I love that the film leaves so many open-ended questions about so many of the characters, because I feel like it makes you not just think after you've watched the movie, but makes you actually feel something as you go. And I love that. I think that people, when they watch that movie, they don't question whether they're supposed to feel. That's your
Mm.
natural reaction to it. And I think, depending on where you land on whether they're human or not, I think kind of shows a little bit who you are as a person at your base core values and stuff. But I think it's a movie that has so many layers and so much depth to it and lets you take from it ultimately who you are.
That's a very poetic way of putting it. I love that. Very nicely put. Thank you. I guess my sort of last bit I'll throw in is I like how the climax and ending of this film is not like a grand sort of revolution like in Elysium. It's more of like a quiet internal journey of Kay. And that aligns with, like, even though this isn't a direct adaptation of a Philip K. Dick novel, it does a great job, like I said earlier, of echoing his themes. And one of his major things is didn't really believe in like epic heroes. He didn't really go for or write about these like, larger than life figures who led these epic revolutions and just created like great outward change. He wrote about these everyday people who in many ways were constrained by their circumstances, but within that found ways to commit small acts of bravery and authenticity and sacrifice that might not even get noticed necessarily by the outside world or by other people. And that even they themselves might not know, like, how much did this really help or contribute to the big picture? But they did it anyway, because it was a way of reclaiming authenticity and humanity in a world that discouraged those things and encouraged, lack of humanity and inauthenticity. So it was a way of reclaiming it. And that's the kind of heroism that Philip K. Dick believed in. It was these quiet acts of inward transformation. And so it's a nice contrast between these two films in the type of heroism we see. And yeah, I love the idea that you don't have to be this larger than life hero, and you can, in your daily life, do small things. Be authentic, be true, be honest, be compassionate in small ways. And that is your quiet rebellion against this dehumanizing system.
I think that's my favorite part of movies like this, is it holds up a mirror at the end to allow you as the viewer to go on now and say, okay, this is who that person became in such a relatable situation. What can I be and what can I do? And I think it's ultimately a message of hope.
It is. It is indeed. And it's very appropriate because we started out with these very dark themes. I'm like, whoa, this is heavy. And then now I kind of feel like, oh, I feel uplifted.
I can do it
too. Yeah. Oh, wonderful. So, Aleena, where can people find you on social media?
Oh, gosh. I am on Instagram more often than I want to be. I am under Aleena.Averly, I think is my name on there. And mostly I contribute my stuff to YouTube, which I think I'm under the same name, just my name, Aleena Averly, on YouTube. And yeah, that's pretty much where I hang out. I don't really interact much on TikTok because every time I'm on TikTok, it just makes me mad. So I don't. But for some reason, I open it every day.
Well, speaking of like algorithms and manipulation and
there's that manipulation.
Yeah. Also, is there anything specific that you would like to plug? Anything you're working on right now that you want to mention, even if it's not necessarily ready or out yet, or just really just anything at all?
Honestly, these days I've been working on smaller projects, not programs. I've made a few patterns for things that people can make themselves that are currently a very popular character. And those are going to be uploaded this week. So yeah, I'm just kind of looking for creative outlets that other people can do too, and just have a little joy as we all watch 2049 become a reality.
Well, those are, like I mentioned before, Philip K. Dick's belief in small acts of authenticity. In fact, literally, there are a few characters in a few of his novels who create these little works of art that are authentic in a world of a lot of fakes. And these are presented as these small acts of rebellion. So, hey, you're creating this authentic, creative content that comes out from your heart. And there's your little replicant rebellion right there.
Yay, I am a replicant. Perfect.
But you're rebelling, and that's the important part.
Yes.
So, Aleena Averly, thank you so much for joining me on Strange Days, Here We Come. I really enjoyed this conversation. I hope you did too, and I hope you'll be up for coming back on sometime.
Yes, I absolutely loved it. Thank you for your patience with my rants and letting me have a space to talk.
Thank you for your patience with my rants.